Africa has emerged as one of the world's fastest growing cryptocurrency markets, with its regional economy recently surpassing the 205 billion mark in crypto. Across the continent, more people are using crypto for remittance services, cross-border payments, and a hedge against local currency inflation. Yet despite its practicality, cryptocurrency remains deeply polarizing due to its investment volatility and the negative news stories surrounding it, including corruption cases. It's led to much skepticism for investors and much of the general public. Nevertheless, with its unique uses and the growing businesses adopting it, it does seem as if crypto is here to stay in Africa. Today we speak to three guests leading the way in cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. Shantelle Awoyomi is a VC and crypto ecosystem builder, specializing in blockchain, frontier technology, and AI. She's the head of ecosystem at Golem Network and the host of the podcast Growing in Tech. On the operating side, she's worked with founders and leadership teams to drive growth, as well as onboarding numerous people into Web3 grassroots ecosystem initiatives. Mudy is the founder of the multi-agent automation layer startup Inscribable. Mudy has spent the last decade leading development teams to build fintech and decentralized systems. His work includes creating businesses that automate crypto trading and bridging the gap between AI and blockchain infrastructure. Kamogelo Mosime focuses on venture capital, financial modeling, and blockchain-based finance. He has been at the forefront for the use of stablecoin across Africa and its financial uses for individuals. At the stablecoin-based infrastructure provider Yellow Card, he's the country manager overseeing strategic expansion in South Africa. Hello, and welcome to the Afribond Roundtable. Now, before we start, I just want to quickly explain the format. I'll be asking the panel this time 4 different questions regarding cryptocurrency and blockchain across Africa. The panel will have 12 minutes to give their thoughts and feedback. Then, once time has elapsed, we'll pass to our virtual guest, Carol, who will give his feedback and his discussions on the conversation so far. So without further ado, let's get started. So our first question, guys, is cryptocurrency an effective form of currency for financial transactions across Africa? So asking this question because we've seen the surge in terms of individuals, businesses, corporations using crypto recently. And I'd love to know and get your thoughts on, do you see this surge increasing? Why has it taken place? And what do we expect in the future? Shantelle, happy to start with you.
I think it's a really good question. I think we should also maybe think about the framing of it as well, because financial transactions don't exist in a silo in itself, right? Yes, we transact within the continent, but a lot of money flows between continents. And I think personally, I see it continuing to grow, the adoption of crypto and in particular stable coins will continue to grow. I think right now we're around 52% year-on-year growth when it comes to stable coins in Sub-Saharan Africa.
Wow.
But yeah, what do you think, Mudy?
Yeah, I mean, reference to what they said of Africa 2%. So I actually read somewhere, there's a statistic survey that showed that there were about, out of 3 people, 1 of every 3 persons have actually used crypto in Africa. And just in 2024 to 2025, there was about 205 billion sent to Africa. So that's a huge number. I mean, compared to the global standard of crypto volume, it's like a drop in the ocean, but it shows that there is lots of participation in crypto in Africa. So, and financial houses, financial systems, platforms built in Africa, they're actually helping with upfront and on-ramp systems that help, to make sure that these transactions happen in minutes instead of hours, as we've seen in traditional finance. Right.
I mean, so, and building on to that, so I've talked in the past, Shantelle, with you about the cross-border transactions with fiat money, and obviously we're talking now that it seems like cryptocurrency is increasing. So what are the reasons, because you mentioned some of the trends that are taking place, what are the actual reasons as to why more and more people in Sub-Saharan Africa and maybe in North Africa too are using crypto and to blockchain technology in general?
I mean, I'll touch on a few and then pass over, but I think if we speak about remittances, with stable coins and blockchain technology, you get T0 settlement, and that means that you get the money the same day. When you think about sending money in the past, it will take days. Those wire transfers take ages, right? Yep. And they're also super expensive. I think like the average like fee cost is 9% for a transaction, in like in the normal fiat world. But when it comes to blockchains, that number is slashed like by more than half. So it becomes cheaper, it becomes faster. They're like two huge pain points that like any person that's transacting will feel. So why wouldn't you use stablecoins or crypto?
Absolutely. Right. So basically, I've tried sending money from using Western Union and this system, and it takes like 3 to 5 days, sometimes 7 days. And if there's any problem, I mean, it's going to take you maybe 2 weeks to get it rectified, and that's absurd, right? So seeing the crypto system sort this out in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it's a big deal. Like, it's a really big deal. We see people from South Africa, Mauritius, Nigeria, using crypto, accessing fiat, USDT, USDC, and it's really, really easy, because imagine having to go to an airport or go to the roadside to get like fiat, and you have to go through bribes and all of that. So it's really easy to stay on your phone, get access to platforms that you can just, make an exchange, or send money to the US, send money to the UK easily in a few minutes, right? So I think that it's a big game changer.
Yeah, but then the public will usually kind of go to the easiest platform to send the money.
Absolutely.
Can also as well, another reason we've talked in the past about the liquidity crisis that some currencies have had, running reserves, and cash is still king across various regions across the continent, and Nigeria and bigger nations, Kenya too. Are we seeing crypto and, for instance, Bitcoin as well, obviously the most popular one, being used because there are times in which people cannot access cash and they can't access the currency that is there, the currency that they use in the country?
Absolutely. So I think I'm not really sure about the year. I think 2023 back in Nigeria, there's a time when dollar was really scarce, and it returns to USDT, USDC, and the government actually encroached on everyone. Like, this is the reason why the dollar is crashing. I mean, I know, because if dollar is scarce and the naira keeps losing value and people keep using USDT, it may affect, the naira rate. But like, pushing crypto away is actually going to make it more scarce, and it's going to make the naira go more devalued.
Right.
So there has to be like a way to introduce some sort of balance between the systems, right? So, and this is very important, and it's very trivial for businesses, because they need access to liquidity. I mean, if I get my stuff from China, or I get my stuff from the West, right, or from any other continent, and I have to rely on USDT, I have to rely on fiat. So it's important to have access to these platforms that actually do on-ramp and off-ramp, because naturally, some guy named Wu Sheng in China, he doesn't have any business with USDT. Or if I can use an on-ramp and off-ramp platform, they can actually take my naira, convert it to USDT, and convert it back to yen, and send it to Wu Sheng. Right. And so if we don't have these systems, then I'll have to bribe my way to an airport and get some pounds or some yen. Right. And that's absurd, because you're actually going to pay 5 times the value of what you're trying to get. Yeah. And so I think it's really important that we have access to this liquidity as businesses, small business, especially the small businesses. What do you think, Shantelle?
I like your answer, because your answer is very practical, and mine is more ideological to this, because what you're asking was about trusted parties in terms of like the financial landscape in Africa. And if we go back to the first cryptocurrency, into Bitcoin, and that like 2008 white paper, like it wasn't built, like cryptocurrencies, they weren't built with Africa necessarily in mind. It was like peer-to-peer transactions, right? Because but it's very fitting for the continent, because there is no trust with these financial institutions, right? And these networks have like systemically like failed people on the continent since forever, basically. So that's my answer. Is yes, we need crypto. And there are a multitude of reasons why.
Yeah. No, I find that really fascinating, what you said about the public across various countries in Africa. We're from Nigeria naturally, and there's been problems with development in the past. We can talk about when there's war-torn regions, and I find it interesting that sometimes we don't trust the government, and therefore you might want an alternative form of that currency. So I guess in my head then, where do we see the currency going in terms of what are the objectives for the industry? Would you want Bitcoin, other cryptocurrencies to replace some of the more fiat monies that we use? Or is it more that it's an alternative source that can work hand in hand with the currencies?
Yeah, so I think it's an alternative source because, I mean, I've seen lots of people go, oh, I only spend Bitcoin, I only spend. See, actually, I was like that at some point in my life. I was like, oh, Bitcoin. So people would ask me for money and I would say, oh, I don't have Bitcoin, or there's some conversions. But it has to go hand in hand because you stay in Nigeria, you cannot make, I mean, some people may agree that we should spend Bitcoin. I think there's this country, what's the name of that country now? They use Bitcoin as a legal tender. Salvador. Yeah. They use Bitcoin as a legal tender in Salvador, right? Some countries may take that, but we have to agree that not all countries are going to accept that. And they have their reasons why. They have their structures. Everybody have what they represent, what they're trying to achieve. Yeah. So they work in hand because if I have Bitcoin and I have Naira, I can use Naira as my day-to-day fiat for spending, for feeding, for shopping, whatever. But I can use Bitcoin as a store of value. I can use Bitcoin as a way to hold value. And if you had Bitcoin in 2015 and you had Naira in 2015, let's say you had 100 million Naira in 2015 and you had just one Bitcoin, you know the figure. Right? So it goes hand in hand, absolutely, because I can't walk into the market and say I want to buy 2 packs of bread and you want some Bitcoin. It doesn't work that way. But maybe in the future, right? Maybe in the future. But yeah, that's what I think. What do you think, Shantelle?
Oh, maybe I think that crypto is here to stay, but I think we have to strip it back from like the term crypto and think about blockchain technology.
Absolutely.
If you think about, like, look at USDC, right? There's a private issuer, but it is the US dollar on chain. In African countries, you're going to have the same thing. Like, you already have compliant Naira stable coins. They're popping up all over. Tanzania has one. And I just think that the technology itself is here to stay. So whether we like it or not, maybe fiat currencies will end up being cryptocurrencies at the end of the day on like the back end. The thing about the money in the bag, like, you never touch it. You know, it's just a number.
Absolutely.
You know?
I agree.
And then, but it's just the fact that like what crypto allows for is programmable money. But then it starts getting a bit political because it's like then where you spend your money can be controlled. But
no, for sure. I mean, look, there's other questions about decentralization, how to use crypto, whether it's to store value or as an investment. There's many ways to do so. So more than happy to touch on this in a bit. But we're getting close to the time, so I'll stop it for the first question. But Carol, you've heard this now, so I'll pass it on to you as a person that's also in the crypto space. I'd love to get your take on where you think cryptocurrencies may be heading in terms of its use by individuals and by companies.
Is cryptocurrency an effective form of currency for financial transactions in Africa? Yes, absolutely, particularly in regions where traditional banking infrastructure is expensive, it's fragmented, it's inaccessible. In Africa, crypto is increasingly being used to solve real-world problems like cross-border payments, remittances, access to US dollar liquidity, and basically protection against local currency volatility. You look at markets like Nigeria, for example. So stablecoins in particular are becoming very important because they allow businesses and individuals to transact globally faster, more efficiently than many other traditional systems. So answer in short, yes, it is extremely effective. It is actually necessary.
And our second question is, does cryptocurrency and blockchain deserve the negative criticism that it often receives? So we could just go on our phones right now. We could literally just see articles on Google, BBC, everything else about potential scams, potential corruption cases involving crypto influencers, stakeholders, and the like. So as people in the space, I'd love to get your thoughts on what you think about the criticism that it receives. Do you think that can maybe change in the future? Or do you think there's always going to be that wariness towards crypto and blockchain and the space in general?
Right. So I think it's well deserved. The negativity is well deserved. But like every system, right, it's not crypto problems, it's people's problem. So people are greedy, and what they're greedy to do, they try to steal, they try to scam, right? So people actually think that crypto and blockchain is just about shit coins or meme coins. It's bigger than that. It's a whole ecosystem, right? There's real world asset tokenization. There's the NFTs. I mean, obviously the NFTs has a lot of scam around it. I mean, talking about money laundering. So I see somebody just, sell a rock for $100 million. I'm like, oh, I know what to do next, right? So I'm already having smart ideas. Maybe I'll just sell a watch and some billion, gazillion dollars or whatever, right? So it's a people problem, basically. We have people who are greedy and want to take advantage of these situations. And let's come back to the traditional system. Yes, there's scams in the traditional system as well. We have and it's actually on the $1 trillion scale, not even $1 million scale, right? So we have trillions of dollars, trillions of pounds being stolen on the traditional system. So I think that, I have a non stake on this, but I would rather lose money in crypto and lose it fast, right? I'll lose money fast and be done with it, cry fast and be done with it, than rather have my money go down due to inflation in 10 years. And I don't even have time to grieve because it's going to take a long time, right? So we're getting scammed on both ends. It's just how you see it.
Sure.
Right. So I think there are a lot of bad experiences, bad leaders, bad builders in the system, but it exists everywhere. It exists in every ecosystem. And it just depends on how you...
I think as humans, we're wired against change, right? And crypto is a new technology. Blockchain is a new technology. So immediately your guard is up. And as you said, is it the technology or is it the people?
Right.
Because the behavior of people and the bad actors have given the technology a bad name, but the technology is solid, it's sound. And I think, if we get into the nitty gritty of it, there's a company called Chainalysis, and they are the leading blockchain intelligence company.
Yeah.
They do all the forensic work when things go wrong. And in their estimations, only 1% of all illicit financial activity is in crypto. And the UN estimates that there's 5% of bad behavior. So the rest of it is going through traditional systems. But the big banks don't have a bad name. When they go bust and the money runs out, the governments bail them out because it's compliant or because it's legal.
Yeah.
But there is so much bad behavior right in those institutions. So I would just say the crypto doesn't necessarily deserve the bad name it has. We say this in the space all the time. We're oh, it's so early. We're so early. We're building before regulation is in place. And so it's kind of long list sometimes. But the behaviors of people is what makes it bad.
Yeah, no, I think the 2 points you made, first, it being a new concept, it's only been around for what, a few decades or a couple of decades now. So there's always going to be skepticism to new products. But that was going to be one of the questions I was asked when you said you compared the ratio in terms of corruption to crypto compared to the ratio of corruption compared to fiat money and currencies. I always found that interesting, and it would be really interesting just to know the difference between them. And as you said, when banks go bust, there isn't too much stake there, or there isn't too much criticism there in relation. So, but I also touched you did mention meme coins. And I'll be honest, I'm probably not the biggest fan of that, unless maybe the Trump coins or the celebrities hosting these coins. And yes, kind of the pump and dump is becoming in a weird way a negative phenomenon. So what are your thoughts there? Just because for me, it does seem like a lot of these meme coins are big scams and they are hurting investors, but what are the thoughts around that?
Yeah, so meme coins, so all the thing about meme coins, it's bake a cake really fast. That's what it's really about. Make money fast, put your money in fast, get your profit out fast, or lose your money fast. So I think that's where the traditional system wins, because good things take time, obviously. So lots of people have made money. I've personally made money from some crypto. I've probably lost more money. So meme coins have this terrible idea because it's just about the latest rock, the latest chicken, the latest trend, whatever's going around the corner. So it has a bad name, definitely. And if you don't really understand the system, stay off of it. That's the system. And to be honest, there are tools like that's why we're using Coplay. So it actually gives you leverage. So you can see what carriers are buying. You can get back analytics of what's happening in the system, what people are talking about on X, what people are talking about on the internet. So when you actually buy a token, you're not just buying because some carrier just shows things like buy my token and he gets 100x and you become exit liquidity, right? You actually get leverage. So if you can get your hands on leverage, get your hands on tools, decentralized tools, of course, that can help you create your stop loss. And if you can invest what you're willing to lose, because people get emotional and they just invest their money and they expect, oh, it's a short token. There's no such thing as short token. Even in the traditional system, things go bad as well. So like I said, it's like trying to move fast. Even in the traditional system, things go bad as well. So you just have to make sure you invest wisely, invest what you're willing to lose, and make sure you take advantage of leverage. All the best tips, stay away from it. Absolutely.
I mean, like, I love a good meme coin, you know, and I'll say, well, I mean, it all depends on your risk appetite, right? Your crypto is yours, it's your money, right? You can choose what you want to do with that. And like, the way I think about meme coins is, I think meme coins like are to crypto what penny stocks are to stocks. If you invest in penny stocks or try and trade them, that's like your choice. And it's the same with meme coins. I think the reason why they have like such a bad rep is because they're just like silly. You know, like it's silly, it's really silly stuff. But I also think that like memes as a whole are entrenched in like core like blockchain culture. And I think that that's like the thing that retail investors don't really understand. Like they don't necessarily see that side of things. Memes are huge when you're like working in the space. They're absolutely massive, and I think it's like it's an inside joke that now outsiders are part of the conversation, and it doesn't necessarily carry. There is financial risk with like anything that you do on chain, but that is what you have to accept, that risk. If somebody like wrongs you or pulls the plug of the coin you just invested in, you kind of accept that risk going into it, you know. So like I'm not necessarily against, and I don't think they're like pushing the technology forward or like the credibility of the space forward.
Well, you can compare it to in the stock world where there's various stocks that aren't pushing anything forward, or just using it to
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
Exactly.
No, okay, I can understand that.
Yeah. Well, I also think the regulation, if they're more, I don't think it's ever going to get to that space where get regulated. It's never going to get to that space. But I think stocks are more regulated.
Right.
But like she said, it's really entrenched in the meme culture. And I mean, I know people who just buy stuff because they have like a sentimental value for that. Something like, oh, it's a beard. I like to have like my beard or whatever.
It's a loaf of bread or something.
Exactly. So I mean, sometimes you can get really diabolical. Like someone can just die and deal with meme coins. It's like 100 meme coins, and it's like, what's wrong with you guys, bro?
There are fringe groups that really like really dark jokes. You don't have to participate in that. But I think the whole point of like blockchain technology is that like it's permissionless. Like, do what you like. There will always be bad behavior. There's always bad behavior, but you choose whether or not to engage her.
Okay, fascinating, and now thanks for explaining basically the reasons as to why meme coins exist. But I just want to touch on before we finish volatility across crypto. So we saw when it came to COVID the massive increase and then drop in Bitcoin and altcoins in general, and now we saw Bitcoin in recent years go up to 100k and back down to 77k around that level at the moment. So often a lot of people say that one of the big criticisms is just how volatile these currencies are, and some obviously say you need volatility in order to make good investments and to make that return. But people argue that the cryptocurrencies right now, especially in financial transactions, are just too volatile. What are your takes there? What are your thoughts?
That's why we have low risk DeFi. That's why you have the stable coins, right?
Right.
There were like market driven tokens, those volatile ones, and I think that like they will exist. Like I always go back to stocks, like parallel markets, right? Like stocks are also quite volatile. You have other fiat currencies that are volatile. The US dollar has been very volatile for the past year. And I think that it's about choosing the right currencies to transact in. Some people make payments in Bitcoin because they want the privacy of it all. Some people make payments in like a US denominated stablecoin because that's the only thing the merchant would accept. And then you have other people that will make payments in local stable coins, or which just mirrors the local currency, but it's just on your phone. So yeah, that's my answer.
So like she mentioned about like the different ecosystems. There's Solana, Ethereum, and I think the volatility issue is you really high in the Solana side of things because we have new coins and all of that. And there are stronger ecosystems, XRP, Bitcoin's a bit volatile, but we know that Bitcoin is a store of value. Bitcoin has its huge, I mean, the halving, the institutions invested in Bitcoin. These are like reasons why we know it's going to rise, right? I mean, doesn't mean you're going to go up. Doesn't mean you're going to go up every time. It's also going to have its volatility, but you have to invest wisely. You have to do your DCA, like we're discussing, and she mentioned that she does DCA. So do your DCAs, do your stop losses and all of that. But yeah, the ecosystems, there's Solana, Ethereum, there's XRP. I think there are lots of other blockchains like Base, and so on. So these ecosystems have like their tokens, I think Chainlink and so on. So there are lots of ecosystems that if you put your cash in, you can actually control how your funds, and then especially USDT, USDC. It's obviously hedged to fiat, so it's kind of safe. I mean, even though there's inflation, right? So the point is we have lots of volatility everywhere in every system. So crypto actually paints a picture and shows everybody what the traditional space is, like in hindsight, like this is how it goes really fast. Think about it like we're fast forwarding the traditional system. Sure. So, but crypto is really beautiful because the ecosystem is really dynamic, right? And it paints a full picture for everyone, right? But if you can identify the ecosystem, you can actually find community. You can find people who think like you, people who actually do the things you do, right? So, and I met some really great people. So I think a couple of weeks back, I spoke at an event in Leeds, and I really met like-minded people. I mean, you can find stuff like that, but it's really hard to find people like that in the traditional system. You know what I mean?
No, I do. I'll say you can say it for the next question. Just moving slightly over. I'd love to bring Carol into this too. So obviously, just going back to the question about negative publicity, that receives you've been in the space as well, working across crypto and blockchain. We'd love to get your thoughts on how many of the people across as you're in South Africa feel about cryptocurrencies and how the industry, as you think, feels about cryptocurrencies and blockchain and everything.
I think some criticism is fair. It's rightfully there, particularly around scamming, fraud, speculative behavior that emerged during the industry's rapid growth. Blockchain technology itself is neutral, however. It's simply just infrastructure, right? It's more transparent and more programmable. It's a better way to move and record value for those reasons. So the focus really should be on responsible innovation, on regulation, on real utility, rather than just dismissing the entire industry because it has bad actors. So in terms of do cryptocurrencies and blockchain deserve the negative publicity? I mean, nobody really deserves negative publicity, right? The thing is not the problem. It is how certain individuals are using it for exploitative behavior or illegal behavior. So I think that should really be the focus. We really do want to shift the narrative away from crypto being a scammer's tool or something to facilitate crime, and more towards something that is genuinely transformative, particularly in the African landscape.
Liking this video so far, please take a moment to give us a like, hype, and subscribe. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so you never miss an update from us. For more deep dives and one-on-one interviews, you can listen to our podcast, The Afribond Sessions, either here on YouTube or on Spotify. On the Afribond Sessions, we speak with leaders and key stakeholders across Africa and the African diaspora to explore the business, the ideas, and trends shaping the continent. You can also visit our website to learn more about the work we do at Afribond and our upcoming events. But for now, back to the show. And our third question is, what are some of the most prominent projects and trends that are taking place across cryptocurrency and blockchain? So obviously I've got two experts in both the spaces here. So I'd love to just get your thoughts on those trends. You've already thought fine. There have been a couple of questions that was done, but love to get your thoughts and opinions on how maybe some of the blockchain infrastructure is impacting individuals and companies using crypto across Africa, and some of the companies that are making important strides there too. What do you have to say about you?
Right. So we have lots of companies that are really innovating in Africa. I think to mention a few, Yellow Card, Bundle, as a finance, right? So these are a couple of companies, and I also have a friend using GetBlock, so it allows you to basically do P2P transactions, but through WhatsApp with like an AI agent, and it's really fast. So I think this is where Africa is at right now in terms of we know that blockchain is way more than payments, but right now I think what Africa is really focused on is payments and some form of real-world asset tokenization. But majorly payments, moving transactions from on-ramp to off-ramp transactions, that's where we are right now. And those are like the key players innovating in Africa currently.
Shantelle, I know you wanted to maybe point out some of the trends too, so feel free to.
Yeah, like I'm an infra person. So I think, you know, like you mentioned some really great teams that are building in that like payment space with stablecoins. And stablecoins has been a huge trend that we've been seeing globally, but specifically, especially in Africa as well. And I think like those companies are doing really serious work, but they're all at the application layer. So if we go like a little bit deeper into the stack and we actually just go back to like the basics of like, what are like the key properties of blockchains? I mean, the first one, you know, is immutability. You know, once something is on chain or once something is recorded on chain or a transaction has happened in a block, can't be rewritten, right? You have this auditable trail that can't be tampered with. And then we also have composability. Like blockchains, you can layer them on top of each other and you can take out specific bits and like put them into like other applications. And that's something you can't really do in financial, like traditional systems because they're so fragmented. Like if we take, let's say we take identity as something. Identity is something that, especially in Africa, could live on top of blockchain technology. It means that you have access to financial systems, you have access to healthcare, you have access to like credits. Like that's a very composable example of what blockchains could make happen, make a reality, and reducing just friction. And I think the last thing that we don't necessarily speak so much about, especially in the African context, is permissionlessness. Yeah. You don't need a bank to tell you, like, to authorize your money, like the transactions that you're making. When it comes to blockchains, you can do that. Not your keys, not your coins, you know? It's something that it's a matter that we always say, but it's true. It's like, you want to participate in this permission system where, like, your money is yours. And I think that, like, if we hone in on those three things, so like immutability, composability, permissionlessness, then we can see more applications being built. I understand why we focus so much on like finance, just because the systems don't exist in a way that is like, you know, good enough for like African people throughout the continent. So yeah, I think that's where I'll leave that.
Right. No, I find it fascinating. I think the key thing for me with a person that is an expert, it seems like there's that increase in visibility for people to either use crypto or even be able to enter more sectors, more businesses, because it becomes cheaper and it becomes easier and feasible. So in terms of trends, what would you maybe suggest in terms of crypto that because of that increased visibility, the reduction in costs, it allows more businesses and companies to enter markets and individuals to enter markets that they necessarily couldn't in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So, like you mentioned, permissionless, and I think back in 2021, myself and some friends, we did some projects, and we made some real like cool cash just 2021. I mean, we could never do it on a traditional system.
Right.
Never. Right. So, you know, it increases or reduces the barrier to get into the system. Right. So you have access to people who are actually, like I spoke about community.
Yeah.
So there's this rich community on the blockchain ecosystem. Like if you are building something for Bitcoin, you're going to get like people from the US, from the UK, people from different parts of the world who are going to buy into what you're doing. because it's a community. Right? So it's really rich in culture. It's really rich in community. So if you're going to identify a problem that you want to solve and you create a system around blockchain, and it's, I won't say the word niche, but the real word is problem, right? And have a community. I think you're gonna find. Like I've done this time after time after time.
Yeah.
And in 2023, I created a company and we had about 30,000 users, and it was people all around the world. Not so many from Africa, but from US and UK, and it was really like an NFT platform basically.
Yeah.
And people really loved it because it was like Bitcoin themed, Bitcoin native, and it had sentimental value. People were like, "Well, I'm going to buy this for my children."
Yeah.
Right. So it's really interesting to see how people can come from Africa, from different parts of the world, Nigeria, and actually create impact through blockchain technology.
Fascinating. Oh, fascinating. And maybe just moving on, just let's spin it back to Africa a little bit. So we talked about in the first question about how it's used for transactions, but there's kind of that consensus that when it comes to Africa, it's more about using it for transactions rather than sort of value. I'm sure there's many people in the space that do. But when we're talking about, for instance, meme coins or investment in general, I'd love to get your take about the difference between maybe investing in crypto and transactions and financial structures in general.
I think, okay, so I was in Singapore for a conference called Token 2014, right? And I went to a stablecoin summit there, and the founder of USDT was, he was there, and he mentioned that during COVID, they just grew so fast and they didn't know why. And the reason why was because young people in Nigeria were teaching their parents how to save in dollars, right? And so there is a point of it where it's like, okay, you're hedging against inflation, and like maybe you're investing in, like, you're buying USDT and you're holding it, or maybe you're buying like random meme coins. But I think that the behavior has always been there. It was just mimicking behavior that already existed, but it was just easier during COVID to do that.
Okay, absolutely. Can I just say stuff? Because one question I had about some of the companies and the pioneers in the industry, a lot of the time, especially when cryptocurrency and blockchain is nascent, it was coming from the West. A lot of the founders, and this question, the topic is around cryptocurrency in Africa. So, is there kind of be maybe a disconnect between how the blockchain technology, how it's built, and sometimes it's being built for the West or being built for Asia? And I know obviously you guys have done quite a bit of work in terms of Africa, but obviously the dominant of the technology is from the Western Asia. So how can that meet the problems, or does it detain problems?
Absolutely. I think in terms of the way that the protocols are built and the infrastructure is built, like I said, it's permissionless. So there are no, like, they build the plumbing and then you can build an application on top of that.
Sure.
For your market, right?
Sure.
So that isn't necessarily the problem. The problem that I've seen in the space is capital allocation. Where does the money go? The money doesn't go to African, like, VCs or like the African ecosystem. Liquidity is a huge problem as well for blockchain companies that are building on the continent as well.
Yeah.
I think a lot of things have been built already, but that doesn't, and we also need to talk about, like, the ethos of the space, right? The ethos of the space is, it started from the open source community. Okay. So you have this infrastructure that has been built, it's open sourced. Anyone can really take it and tweak it for what they want to use it for. So I think the foundation was laid and that inspired people. But could I say there were no African builders? I don't know. I actually haven't looked into it, like who was building back in the beginning. I mean, I've bumped into some people that have told me they've been here from the beginning. Yeah. I'm like, wow. Yeah. It's incredible.
So as to what she's saying, I really think it's a liquidity problem in terms of ideas. Or I've met really quick builders. They have, like, the developers, they have the ideas, they have different things available to them, but they lack liquidity. Right, so it's a liquidity problem, right? So, like you said, like you rightly said, the infrastructure is open. The open source infrastructure is open. Anybody can build on it. It's not limited to Africans or people from the West. Anybody can build on Bitcoin. Anybody can I've built in Bitcoin, I've built in Ethereum, I've built in Arbitrum, I've built in so many ecosystems, right? I've built in Solana, right? So you can build on anything, no matter where you are in the world, in Africa, Nigeria, Nairobi. You just need access to liquidity. And sometimes if you have the right community, the right connections, I think that's a plus in just being able to like expose yourself to opportunities, where even with limited funds, being able to get in the right rooms. I know people who got funding in Africa and they are in Africa currently. So they come to UK and US sometimes for events and all of that, but they stay in Africa to work in Africa. Some guys that do interoperability, there's an interoperability company, I can't recall the name right now, but they got like $2 million funding and they're based in Vegas, So lots of these guys. So you just have to, I mean, it's not just about having the idea, it's also being able to put yourself in the right places, connect with the right people. And sometimes lots of you didn't really have the money. So initially, you just have to create the value, find people who need it, give them the value, and the fund will come. It's not as easy as to say, but it's doable.
And I just want to say one thing of that. My last thing that I was going to say was about access, right? Because of like the weaker African passports, means that they not like African delegates, they can't actually come to these conferences where all the mind share is happening.
Absolutely.
So then it's like the conversation doesn't necessarily carry because there is like a systemic, everything's systemic. It's like because all the passports are so weak, visas aren't granted, that mind share doesn't happen. I was in Bangkok for DevCon, one of these huge conferences, and I was with a Ugandan founder. And he said, he said to me, I built my startup for my community, but coming here and seeing that like people are building for global problems, but I didn't think as big to do that. And I think just like by being in the right rooms and having access to the right conversations, even without the money, you can feel inspired. And maybe that's one of the reasons why you haven't had these like big names, but we have amazing people building startups
for sure
on the continent.
No, for sure. And it's not just the crypto industry that suffers from this. Across Africa, there's various different industries, and foreign investment is really important towards Africa and also to different continents as well. So it's a trend that we'll continue to see, hopefully, that more investors coming in, and as the continent and countries continue to grow across Africa, hopefully there can be more investment there. But just bringing it back to Kamel as well, as we just finish up that third question. So love to get your take on some of the more prominent projects and some of the trends that you're seeing take place.
Some of the biggest trends we're seeing across Africa are stablecoin adoption, cross-border payment infrastructure, remittances, and fintech platforms using blockchain to improve financial access, right? So there is growing interest as well in treasury management solutions. That's actually becoming very popular. Merchant payments, connecting African businesses essentially to global liquidity networks. So, it's a far cry from where we used to be a few years ago, where the whole push was financial inclusion. Now it's more, we now want to help bring businesses into Africa for the African market to be able to sort of transact with, do business with, and obviously get better access to their products, easier access to their products. So if you look at countries like Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, these are becoming major innovation hubs within that digital asset ecosystem. So I definitely do think that we're going to see a growing prominence in projects of that nature. We're going to see trends evolving, and that's all going to be based on need and how certain, accessibilities can be made easier. And stablecoin adoption is proving that there's a lot of innovation behind this that's possible. So, yeah.
And our fourth question is, does government intervention support or hinder the cryptocurrency adoption across Africa? So we've seen governments, it's like a love and hate relationship of crypto. Outside of Africa, we could talk about Europe, we could talk about Asia, but in Africa, there's been new legislation recently and in the past as well. But I'm interested in knowing, when we're looking at the regulation that's in place, the regulation that might be able to come in the future, how do we see this affecting the adoption rate, businesses and individuals that are using crypto? I have to start for yourself, from them.
I mean, sure, like, we can think about this in terms of like frameworks, right? Like if we talk about like the blockchain trilemma, which is, decentralization, security, and then also scalability, you can basically achieve two, but one will always fall by the wayside. I think in Africa, there is another trilemma. We have decentralization, we have compliance, and then we have innovation. You can probably achieve two of them, but one will fall by the wayside. And I think every government on the continent right now is struggling with that tension of what do we prioritize and which one falls by the wayside. But do you want to jump in here?
Yeah, so as regards to small businesses, especially in Africa, let's use Nigeria for example. So you need to have like at least 600 million naira in the bank to get like a VSB license for crypto. This actually gives the small businesses like no room for them. No room, right? So, and if you violate this room, you can pay up to minimum of 20 million naira for violating this. So it really doesn't help like the small businesses. So I get the idea of them trying to like get the big guys from the West. That's what they're trying to do. Get the big guys or get like some of the banks to have these licenses. So I know the value of compliance is very important for every ecosystem. We need to have compliance. We need systems that are compliant, because if you're not compliant, there are going to be a lot of things happening behind the scenes, right? So we need compliance. It's important, but there has to be simpler ways of getting people, small people, innovative ways to get these people to build systems and support there. So as far as I'm concerned, it's a big problem for small companies.
No, I can imagine that, because there's so much innovation in the smaller companies, and that's where most companies start from. So there can be massive ideas that are just being stifled because of regulations such as this. And like you said, I understand it for reasons in terms of stopping corruption and trying to get people in the West. But no, it's fascinating. And another point I wanted to bring on as well is a lot of time when people talk about cryptocurrency, they talk about decentralization and how important that is for the framework towards and the currency in general. But when you see the government getting involved, it kind of seems like it doesn't really link well to it, based on the fact that it's supposed to maybe stifle away from the central bank, stifle away from the government. So is that a problem that you see? Like how much should the government get involved based on that kind of decentralization and part of crypto?
I mean, in an ideal world, there will be no centralized party in this like decentralized in the system. Okay. But I think in reality, the governments like have to be involved. As a government, your duty is to protect your people. If you don't get involved, then your people will get harmed. And so that's what happens if you like under index on compliance in that sense. So the government does have a duty to look after its people, but I think that when it comes to new technologies, it's really important to get the right people in the room that help craft this like regulation, to make it friendly for innovation, but also protecting the general population as well.
Right. So when we started crypto, we had this promise that decentralized, but it doesn't really work out that way. Like she has rightfully said, like governments have to protect their people, right? And if you are not compliant, you're putting your customers and your people at risk. So I'm full-time, I support decentralization full-time. Like that's where I stand. Like every time I talk about decentralization, literally centralize, take your money out of those platforms, put it in a platform that's totally decentralized, get a hardware wallet and all of that. But I totally see the value of having compliance for the protection of the people.
Sure.
It's really important, but it really goes down to don't trust, verify. So if you're going to put anything in the platform that's not decentralized, make sure it's something you want to use really quickly. You don't want to put your savings there. You don't want to put your pensions in there and any of that. So you want to put like money you want to spend quickly and find systems that are compliant to your country, right? That allow you to use your system in a decentralized format. Then you can put most of your money there, right?
No, it makes sense. It's kind of like the checking account, the savings account, and everything else.
And just like knowing what the risks are, like don't be underinvolved. Because I think sometimes, especially like you see these companies, like you might see like a Binance or a Coinbase, and you think, okay, I'm gonna put all my money here, but that's not necessarily the safest place to keep it. Exactly. And but I'm somebody that self-custodies, and I think that is also not necessarily the safest place to keep it, just depending on like what links I click on. Like my wallets could be drained. I think we're still in a position in this space where like user experience is really like something that needs to be worked on. And even like at the like more infra level, it's something that we kind of like as custodians of the technology have to build in that makes it safer for everyone to use. I was just gonna say like back on the like government use, and I think that we're starting to see like African governments coming out with new regulations. I know that Ghana just released their vast bill. They have a sandbox where they're like helping shape their regulation with leading companies. I think that's a really good approach to take, especially for like new technologies. Like see how things are being built and let's see what you're comfortable with as like the rule makers, you know? But just don't be greedy. No, no problem.
All example, Well, very odd. What you just said about some of the government putting in the regulation and legislations, and we've talked in the past that crypto and blockchain, it's a very new industry relative to fiat money, which has been basically since the human time. It's new, and there can be arguments that many governments just don't have the information or the technical expertise to be drafting the regulation. We've seen it in crypto, we've seen it in AI. I saw a story in which I won't say the African country, but they made legislation about AI, and the actual legislation was used AI to make the legislation. So I couldn't even think of some of the problems that was in the crypto, but I can imagine maybe it is that a problem where we are seeing maybe the lack of that technical expertise when it comes to the government's drafting regulation there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, imagine creating regulations for a system you don't understand. So I think one of the ways to solve this problem would be to get people who are actually involved in blockchain technology to actually be part of the people who draft this compliance. I mean, it shouldn't be your cousin from shouldn't be your cousin or some part of your family member who does that. It should be someone who has experience. And another thing about compliance in a country like Nigeria is, apart from having the monies in your balance, you also have to go through like a 12-month incubation period. So you have to go through 12 months of incubation, and during that period, you cannot fully release your products. So you just have to release them in bits. And that's big time bureaucracy. Slows you down, makes you want to leave the continent and go do something somewhere else. I mean, you don't need 12 months. I mean, you can learn about crypto in a month, basically. So compliance is important, but if we have people who are really experienced in these things, they can actually fast track all of these processes.
Yeah, I think if we don't want Africa to be left behind in this conversation. We don't want it to be something else that we don't participate in. So I don't think that like, as a people, we can afford to have this regulation written by people that have never built with it. And I agree with you. I think it's about have a roundtable, get people in, go and find like the OG founders of these protocols that built it like 10 years ago and like understand what it was that led them to build it, and then get contextual information from people that are building in your country on the ground, and like get a very complete picture before like starting to draft this regulation. I agree, like Nigeria's regulations are probably the most stringent. And they're over indexing on compliance, using that decentralization. And so I think that like, and losing the innovation too. So I think, you need genuine partnership between governments and between the people that actually understand what's going on. And we're seeing it. Like, I think I mentioned Ghana. Kenya also passed the BAS bill. I think South Africa was the first African country to license exchanges. And I just think that, like, we're seeing it slowly. But like I said, as humans, we're kind of afraid of, okay, will I lose control of my country if I allow this new technology, this new money to come in? And how do you stop that? That's their duty, to be honest.
No, for sure. And I can understand maybe governments, especially when crypto was first introduced, the central bank is supposed to be controlling most of the currency, and then there's a new phenomenon where they can't control the potential currency. Yeah. So that's why maybe there's could be a lot of skepticism for the governments, and maybe they don't want to learn because they can imagine it basically overtaking it.
Well, whether they like it or not, like, adoption is happening. Like, in every country you're seeing, like, more people are using crypto, more people are adopting this. And I think that, like, being afraid is not necessarily the right approach to take. It's, figure it out. Like, go and you've got questions, find answers to them. There are answers somewhere. I think that, like, the fear thing will just mean that the situation gets more out of control at the time.
Yeah, and I also think it boils down to having the right people in government, because the blockchain is immutable. So if you actually move that 1 gazillion away, people are going to see, the blockchain, it's an open ledger. So having the right people who actually value the technology and use it for the right reasons is also really a key role.
Yeah. Well, perfect. Probably the perfect way to end as well. So for this last question, I'll pass it on to you, Carol. So in South Africa, I think I noticed that South Africa, they've been drafting new legislation to, someone might argue, to inhibit crypto too. But love to get your thoughts on this and just regulation in general. How do you think it's been impacting cryptocurrency in these years and blockchain technology in general?
I believe smart regulation actually does support long-term adoption because it creates trust, right? It creates clarity, and it also creates investor confidence. I think something people need to realize is regulation doesn't exist to sort of come at battle with a certain industry. Everything is centered around consumer protection and just making an industry safer for, the overall populace, for sellers and buyers alike. From, the sort of seller's end, if you can put it that way, it is better because it means we become more credible. I think generally the people who would have an issue with it are those who maybe don't have operations that sit slightly above board. However, I do think that there is certain hindrances that come with regulation that's inherent in any sort of, environment that comes under scrutiny, for sure. Africa has a major opportunity right now to build modern financial frameworks that encourage innovation while maintaining strong compliance, and oversight. And I do think we see it in markets like Rwanda, for example. Actually, an article was recently released on Rwanda's stance on licensing. If you're not licensed, you cannot operate as a CASP. You may not provide digital assets of any nature. And that is a hard and fast rule. And their reasoning was essentially around, scammer behavior or any illicit behavior surrounding that sort of asset or industry. And I think that's a positive thing because it now means that if you're in Rwanda, when you're interacting with the stablecoin sort of network or any sort of, crypto related environment, you know that you're going to be protected. And as a business, you know that automatically you have that blanket of credibility over you. It's really only poor or overly restrictive regulation that can definitely slow down innovation. But I think balanced regulation, provided regulators want to, have conversations with providers, it helps legitimate businesses grow, and it still protects consumers. So I definitely don't think it hinders support, but I think it actually supports the growth of cryptocurrency adoption in Africa.
And that's all for the Afribond Roundtable. So a massive thank you to Shantelle, Mudy, and Kamel. We'd really appreciate that if you like this video, if you could give us a like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps us with the algorithm. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, thank you very much and take care.